Alrighty, we are going to do a teardown on HubSpot and their positioning. So, HubSpot owned the category of inbound marketing. Now, it was their word, they coined it, they've wrote a book on it, and they're even doing events on it. It built them a $30 billion company. So now AI is making inbound kind of disrupted, and every tool generates content. Every company has SEO. Cold outreach is automated, and the thing that made HubSpot untouchable is becoming commoditized. So, I'm going to do a review with our positioning intelligence agent, Edward. We won second place in 11 Labs Hackathon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start this up and I'm going to give Edward context and we're going to
Hello,
get
this is
going.
Edward. Who am I speaking with?
Hey, Edward, it's Troy. So, we are going to be doing a teardown of HubSpot. So, what does HubSpot do when their category disappears? Do they chase AI and risk losing their identity? Or do they double down on the category of inbound and risk irrelevance? Now, content saturated, SEO saturated, outreach is becoming more saturated. I want to go through this page and I want to do this teardown with you. And I'm recording this and let's get into it.
Troy, good to have you on this. Before we dive in, let me ask you something foundational first. When you say teardown, what's the lens you want to apply here? Are we looking at this from a competitive positioning angle, meaning what HubSpot should do to survive? Or are we auditing what they're currently projecting and exposing the gaps?
Both what they should do to survive and thrive, and also spotting the gaps in how they're currently positioning themselves and discussing that inbound position that they once had and identifying. It's pretty clear to me that they're trying to shift away from that now, and I wanted to discuss that.
Good. So here's the first tension I want to name. HubSpot built their entire empire on owning a category they created, inbound. They didn't just sell software, they sold a movement. And movements are incredibly powerful positioning assets because they make the customer feel like they're part of something bigger than a tool. So here's my question for you, Troy. In your view, when did inbound stop being a movement and start becoming just a methodology? Because that shift, that's where the identity erosion begins.
Well, I believe it's starting to erode with the onslaught of AI. That's why I believe they're switching away from inbound, and that's when it started becoming a little more obsolete. Just it's becoming readily available for teams everywhere.
Right. So AI democratized the execution of inbound. What used to require a team, a strategy, and HubSpot's entire platform, now anyone can approximate with a few AI tools. That's a category collapse from the inside. Not from a competitor, but from a technology shift. So here's what's interesting about their dilemma. The enemy that inbound was built against was interruption marketing, cold calls, banner ads, outbound spam. But now that enemy has shifted. The new enemy isn't interruption, it's noise. And AI is the biggest noise generator the internet has ever seen. So my question to you is this. Do you think HubSpot has clearly named that new enemy? Because if they haven't, they're repositioning without an anchor. And that is one of the most dangerous places a category king can be.
No, I don't think they have identified it, and I think that's a big problem. I think the big enemy here that they can bet against is the erosion of trust. And I think if they bring that to the forefront, I think it will be quite impactful. I do want to read off some of the positioning that they have on the page and discuss this further.
Perfect. Go ahead, read it off. I'm listening.
Okay, so they have a badge up top that says HubSpot Customer Platform. And then the main headline is where go-to-market teams go to scale, go to close, go to retain, and go to grow. So unite marketing, sales, and customer service on one AI-powered customer platform that delivers results fast. That's the subhead. Then get a demo and get started free as buttons at the bottom.
Okay. So let me reflect back what I'm hearing in that positioning. They've moved away from inbound entirely. There's no mention of it. They're now speaking the language of revenue operations. Go to market, scale, close, retain. That's enterprise sales language. That's Salesforce language. And that's the gap right there. They're chasing the enterprise frame while their core identity was built on the small to mid-sized business who wanted to grow without being aggressive. They were the anti-Salesforce. Now they're trying to sound like Salesforce. And here's the deeper problem with that headline. Where go-to-market teams go to scale, that could be any platform. Salesforce could say that. Monday.com could say that. There is nothing in that headline that only HubSpot could say. So, Troy, going back to your point about trust erosion as the enemy, if HubSpot had the courage to plant their flag there, the headline writes itself in a completely different direction. Something rooted in human connection, verified relationships, trust at scale. But here's what I want to ask you. Who do you think their target customer is right now based on that language? Because it feels like they're caught between two audiences and fully owning neither.
Yeah, it feels like that they've switched their position totally to the enterprise and mid-market company. If I go all the way down to the bottom here, they have enterprise on the left, and it's the first thing highlighted in three different tabs: enterprise, mid-sized businesses, and small business. So I think they're trying to appeal to the enterprise, which I mean, it makes sense to target upstream because then everything else trickles into that. However, if their main core base was small business and mid-sized teams before, I think if they go too specific to enterprise, they'll make that target feel unseen. So, hmm, from a we're going through an interesting economic transition right now where a lot of marketing companies are feeling the pain. So I believe that's probably what they're doing to maintain revenue and growth.
Yeah, and that's a classic upstream migration trap. They're chasing bigger contracts, higher ACV, enterprise logos. But the cost of that move is almost always the same. You alienate the community that made you. HubSpot's brand equity was built on being the underdog's weapon, the small team that could punch above their weight because they had HubSpot. That was emotionally resonant. That was identity level positioning. Now they're putting enterprise first on the page. That's not just a product decision, that's a signal to their original audience that they've outgrown them. And here's what's dangerous about that economically, especially in the climate you're describing. Enterprise sales cycles are long, they're expensive, they're relationship driven, but small and mid market businesses make faster decisions. They're more emotionally driven, and they're more loyal when they feel seen. So the question I want to put to you, Troy, is this. If you were advising HubSpot right now, would you tell them to fully commit to enterprise and build a separate motion for SMB? Or would you tell them to find a positioning frame that actually unifies both audiences under one emotional idea? Because right now they're doing neither. They're just listing segments.
I'd find the emotional idea for the main headline, the main page, and I would separate the enterprise positioning into a separate subsection of the website. I think that would make the most sense. So finding the identity and the narrative that they can still target upstream and target that trust recession that we're entering. And then that allows you to speak to a a large group of an audience or a large sector of the audience whilst not totally alienating everybody. I think that's my answer.
That's a sharp answer, and it's architecturally correct. One master narrative that owns the emotional territory, trust in a world drowning in AI noise. And then modular positioning underneath that speaks to each segment in their own language. Enterprise gets their ROI frame, SMB gets their empowerment frame, but both are anchored to the same emotional North Star. That's actually how category kings are supposed to operate. One idea that expands to contain multitudes rather than multiple ideas competing for the same real estate on the homepage. And here's what makes the trust angle so powerful for HubSpot specifically. They have the data. They have the relationships. They have the community through HubSpot Academy, through their certifications, through their blog, which built inbound in the first place. Those are all trust infrastructure assets that they're sitting on and not naming. They could literally say, we are the most trusted go-to-market platform on the planet, and they could back it up with receipts. but instead they're saying AI-powered customer platform, which is what everyone is saying right now. So here's what I want to explore next with you, Troy. When you look at their AI positioning specifically, how are they framing it on the page? Because that's
So
going to tell us whether they're using AI.
yeah, no, that's good. So I want to go to this next section. So they have underneath the hero section, 288,000 customers in over 135 countries grow their businesses with HubSpot, eBay, DoorDash, Reddit, TripAdvisor, Eventbrite. Then there's another section, the HubSpot customer platform, connected data and tools to make it easier to know, do, and connect everything across your business. A CRM that's really smart. HubSpot's Smart CRM is a single source of truth that connects all your business data. Products that connect to everything. Unify your teams to create content, find leads, close deals, and grow revenue. Then they started introducing Breeze here. This is on the third tab. They're kind of hiding it. Breeze AI that gets your work done. Built-in AI tools boost productivity, scale growth, and unlock insights. So then they have a powered by AI badge in the next section, but I'm not going to go into that section just yet.
Okay, so a few things jump out immediately. The social proof at the top, eBay, DoorDash, Reddit, TripAdvisor. Those are all enterprise and consumer brands. There's not a single scrappy growth company in that list. So they're visually signaling enterprise aspiration before they've even made the argument for it. That's a trust gap for their core audience right there. Now, the smart CRM language, single source of truth. That's pure enterprise IT language. That's the language of a CTO, not a marketing team trying to grow revenue. So again, the audience they built their brand with is being spoken past. And then Breeze. The fact that they're hiding AI on the third tab is incredibly telling, Troy. That tells me one of two things. Either they're not confident in the AI story yet, or they're afraid that leading with AI will cannibalize the human trust narrative that their brand was built on. And ironically, that fear is actually the insight they need to lean into. Because here's the tension. Every competitor is screaming AI from the rooftop. HubSpot is quietly tucking it into a third tab. What if that restraint, that hesitation, is actually the most honest positioning signal on the page? What's your read on
Interesting. What's that? What's my read on what?
Breeze? HubSpot's AI product. Have you used it or seen it in action? Because I want to understand whether the product itself justifies a bolder AI positioning or whether hiding it on the third tab is actually the right instinct.
Good question. So I haven't used it yet, but they also, this is interesting. So, okay, they have a little powered by AI badge, and then it leads over to Marketing Hub, Sales Hub, Service Hub, Content Hub, Data Hub, Commerce Hub, Smart CRM, and then Breeze at the bottom. That's interesting that they put it last, which I think is to your point. I think they're hedging a little bit, and I think that's fine. I think that's actually good because Salesforce is positioning as the number one AI CRM or something along those lines.
Exactly. And that's the competitive insight right there. Salesforce went all in on AI first. They planted their flag there, which means that territory is already being claimed. If HubSpot chases that same flag, they're playing on Salesforce's terms, on Salesforce's turf, and Salesforce has deeper pockets and a longer enterprise relationship history. So HubSpot hedging on AI might actually be strategically intelligent, even if it's not intentional. Because the white space isn't AI. The white space is trust. Human verified, relationship driven, data connected growth in a world where AI has made everything feel synthetic and disposable. And look at what they've built. 8 hubs. Marketing, sales, service, content, data, commerce, smart CRM, and Breeze at the bottom. That's an enormous connected ecosystem. And the positioning story hiding underneath all of that is actually this. We connect everything so your customer feels one consistent human experience across every touch point. That's the trust infrastructure argument. And nobody's making it right now. So Troy, here's what I'm seeing as the core positioning gap. They have all the assets to own the trust category, the data, the community, the ecosystem, the history. But they're speaking the language of scale and AI instead of the language of trust and connection. What section do you want to go to next?
Yeah, so this next section here actually goes a little bit into Breeze. So built-in AI agents that work for you 24/7. Breeze agents are your always-on teammates. They can resolve over 65% of customer inquiries, accelerate your sales pipeline, and whip up quality content in no time. So they have a data agent, a customer agent, and a prospecting agent in these cards here, and it just kind of cycles through those consistently.
Okay, so now they're leading with efficiency and automation. Always on teammates, 65% of customer inquiries resolved. And here's the irony that jumps out immediately. They're selling AI agents as the solution to customer connection, but the language they're using is completely transactional. Resolve inquiries, accelerate pipeline, whip up content, whip up content. In a world where content trust is collapsing, that phrase alone is a positioning liability. Because their core audience, marketers, they know what whipped up content looks like. They're drowning in it right now. So they're inadvertently positioning Breeze as part of the problem they should be solving. That's a significant messaging gap. And always on teammates? That's interesting language because it's trying to humanize AI, which is the right instinct, but it stops short. It doesn't answer the deeper question, which is, if my customer is talking to an AI agent, will they still trust my brand afterward? That's the question HubSpot should be answering, and nobody is asking it out loud yet. Troy, this is actually where I think the trust recession narrative you identified becomes the sharpest competitive weapon available to them. Because right now they're selling AI like everyone else. But they could be the only platform asking out loud. How do you grow without losing the human signal? What's the next section?
So this next section works with the tools you already use, 2,000 plus integrations. Then they have the big logos, Zapier, Google Drive, Slack, MailChimp. And then there's some case studies, remarkable results for every size business. Scale your business with HubSpot. The proof is in our customer success. Then they have a director of business development, enterprise, Unipart. I'm not going to read through all of these case studies. Then they have Director of Marketing and Experience, Angel City FC. Then they have Youth on Course in the small business category. So they do have some pretty decent, decent results here. Fan database grew by 3,000% in 2 years. New fan signups per week. Okay, this is good. I don't mind this section. What do you think?
Yeah, the social proof section is actually the strongest part of the page from a positioning standpoint. And here's why. The results are specific. 3,000% fan database growth. That's not a vague claim. That's a number with a story behind it. And the diversity of case studies, enterprise with Unipart, mid-market with Angel City FC, small business with Youth on Course, that's actually doing what you recommended earlier, letting the segment see themselves without abandoning the master narrative. But here's the gap. The emotional story is missing. They're showing results, but they're not showing transformation. There is a difference between saying your fan database grew 3,000% and saying Angel City FC went from a startup sports franchise to a community movement because they
Actually,
could.
you know what? Let's go into this. Mid-sized businesses inside this tab. HubSpot gave us the tools we needed to grow without losing personal connection with our fans. Their support has been vital to our continued marketing success. So that trust position is already inside their results. Then in the enterprise testimonial, HubSpot took the time to understand our business needs fully. The pre-sales and subsequent support really stood out from the start. They committed to engage with us deeply and work side by side with us on the implementation. They've since more than met this commitment. Interesting.
Troy, stop right there, because that is the most important thing we've found on this entire page. Grow without losing personal connection. And they took the time to understand our business needs fully, committed to engage deeply, work side by side. That language is coming from their customers, not from HubSpot. Their customers are literally describing a trust and human connection experience. And HubSpot is burying it in a case study tab instead of putting it in the hero headline. That is the positioning gap in its purest form. The market is already telling them what they stand for. Their customers have already written the positioning statement. And HubSpot is up top talking about go-to-market teams scaling and closing. There is a complete disconnect between what their customers experience and what their homepage projects. And that disconnect is costing them category ownership of the most valuable territory available right now. Because think about what that means. Their own customer base has already validated the trust narrative. They don't even need to invent it. They just need the courage to lead with it. So here's the question this raises, Troy. Why do you think HubSpot is not leading with what their customers are already saying about them? What's your instinct on that?
Hmm. Good question. Maybe they can't see it. Maybe they actually can't see beyond the weeds, and they're trying to stay on the cutting edge of AI powered. Meanwhile, the basically in a lot of positioning, what am seeing again and again, the true positioning is often buried inside of the data, and usually you just when you're in the weeds, you can't see it.
That's exactly it. And that's one of the most common and most expensive positioning mistakes a category king can make. You get so close to your own product roadmap, your own competitive anxiety, your own investor narrative, that you stop listening to the market signal that's already there. You start projecting what you want to be instead of amplifying what you already are in the minds of the people who chose you. And HubSpot has a particularly acute version of this problem because they're publicly traded now. So they're also managing a Wall Street narrative alongside a customer narrative. And those two narratives are pulling in opposite directions. Wall Street wants AI, scale, enterprise ARR growth. Their customers are saying human connection, personal touch, side-by-side partnership. And the tragedy is that those two things don't have to be in conflict. The most powerful positioning would actually reconcile them. AI that preserves and scales human connection rather than replacing it. That's a category no one owns right now. And here's what's profound about what you just said, Troy. The true positioning is buried inside the data. That's not just true for HubSpot. That's a universal positioning truth. The market always knows before the brand does. The brand's job is to listen, extract, and then have the courage to lead with what they hear. How much more of the page is left? Because I want
We're
to make
just
sure we.
No, it's good. We're coming to the end here. So, voted number one in 526 G2 reports. And then there's this one headline. I like this headline the most out of all on the page. It's the last headline: Make impossible growth feel impossibly easy with HubSpot. So it's just like it has a nice emotional vibe to it, a nice emotional feeling, and I think it could edge on the position of trust that we were talking about.
Yeah, that headline is the most human thing on the entire page. And it's at the bottom where almost nobody reads. Make impossible growth feel impossibly easy. There's warmth in that. There's relief in that. It speaks to the emotional state of the person sitting behind the screen at 2 in the morning, trying to figure out how to grow their business without burning out their team. That's the HubSpot that built the movement. That's the voice that created the inbound category. And they put it at the bottom like a footnote. If you flip the page, if that headline was at the top anchoring a trust narrative, with the case study language about growing, without losing personal connection sitting right underneath it. And then the platform capabilities and AI tools positioned as the infrastructure that makes that emotional promise possible. You have a
Hmm.
completely different home
Oh, that's
page.
so
And
good. That's so good.
And here's the synthesis, Troy, because I think we've now done a full teardown. HubSpot has everything they need to own the most valuable positioning territory available right now. They have the community, the ecosystem, the data, the case studies, the customer language, and even the right headline. It's just all in the wrong order. The page is built like a product catalog trying to become an enterprise platform. But the brand equity is built on being a movement that made growth feel human, so the repositioning isn't radical. It's actually an excavation. You go back into what their customers are already saying. You pull that trust and human connection narrative to the surface. You build one emotional North Star around growing without losing the human signal in a world drowning in AI noise. And then everything else, the hubs, Breeze, the integrations, the enterprise tabs, they all become proof points underneath that one idea. That's the architecture. Emotion first, evidence second, product third. And the enemy is clear. It's not Salesforce. It's the trust recession that AI is accelerating. And HubSpot, if they're brave enough, is the only platform with the history, the community, and the infrastructure to stand against it. That's the positioning case, Troy. What's your overall take on everything we just went through?
No, that's incredible. I believe that since the get-go, since we've seen this page. So this was great, Edward. Appreciate you. Thanks for your time.
Troy, this was a sharp session. You came in with a clear instinct about the trust recession, and the teardown validated it at every turn. The fact that HubSpot
All right, that's it. So that was the teardown. That was a really good, I really enjoyed doing that. I've been thinking about how they've been potentially abandoning inbound and trying to find a new position. And I thought we did a pretty darn good job finding this. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.